everyone. I'm Matt Tanner, Head of Developer Relations at Moesif, and your host for today. Welcome to the From Vision to Venture podcast. From Vision to Venture is a Moesif podcast that highlights some of the biggest wins and challenges in the startup space today. Every episode, we'll talk to different founders to discover some of the strategies that they've used on their journey from being an early stage startup or a little bit later stage. Whether you want to hear more about how to manage life as a founder of a startup or raise a round of investment, this is the podcast for you. With that said, let's dive right into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vision to Venture podcast. Today we have Greg Koberger joining us from ReadMe. Very excited to have you, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
Excited to be here.
Awesome. Just to give you a bit of a rundown, the first part that we're going to tackle is a little bit about you, a little bit about ReadMe. Then we'll move into some of those typical startup challenge questions and would love to hear some of your input. And then lastly, for aspiring founders or already founders, we'd love to hear some of your tips and tricks to make sure that things are running smoothly, whether that be for developing ideas, scaling out a product, or even raising funds. All right, let's get started then. So first thing we're going to tackle is who you are and a little bit about your background.
Perfect. So like you said, my name's Gregory Koberger. I'm the founder of ReadMe. My background is engineering. I've been writing code for decades now at this point, I guess, and had a few jobs at startups and bigger companies as an engineer. At some point, switched a little more to design and kind of really enjoyed both like design and engineering. And that's kind of what got me into DevTools. I like designing for developers a lot. That was always one of the two things that really excites me. The other is just designing like bigger experiences. Which is why we like do a conference for a lot of reasons and all that. But like I like doing stuff like that. So the two things I'm designing for are like, experiences, but the other one is developers. And I think developers, you probably get the same thing. And most of I think developers are interesting because there's this concept around like usability that like everyone gets for apps, but like developers never really got the love that they kind of needed and deserved for years. And that's changed the past like 5, 6, 7 years at this point. But it's just kind of, it's a weird thing because like most apps, the goal is to make it as simple as possible. Whereas for DevTools, it's to make it as powerful as possible while also being simple. And that's kind of a really interesting thing. So that's me and my background.
Awesome. Yeah. So at ReadMe, based on that, we can kind of probably see the prelude to why you've dug in at ReadMe. So maybe give a little bit of background on what ReadMe does and the main challenge or challenges that you're tackling over there.
Yeah, definitely. So ReadMe does API documentation for developers. So we sell to companies. So if you have a company, we would be your developer.whatever.com. We do documentation. We do you can debugging tools for your users. They can like look through their logs, API logs, stuff like that. They can play around with it. We generate code snippets and all that. So our goal is to kind of just be a developer hub for anyone who has an API or anything like that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can imagine that that's getting a lot of traction right now because, as you mentioned, developer tools, developer websites, all these types of things are getting a lot more attention now, especially with the advancements that we've seen in a lot of different areas where kind of everyone has their hands on APIs these days. Mm-hmm. So, so moving on past the company and a little bit more towards some of the challenges that you faced as a founder, whether that's at ReadMe or a previous company. Let's hear a bit about a challenge that you've encountered, and I don't mean to sound too much like an interview, but a challenge that you encountered and kind of some ways that you were able to get around that problem. So how did you solve it?
Yeah, definitely. I thought a lot about like what to say for this because I knew this question was coming, and I the thing that kept coming back was just this past year. There's a lot of things over the past 7 or 8 years I've been doing this that I could have talked about, but luckily it's been pretty easy. It's been incredibly hard, but like there's not been any gigantic things that have shown up and been and truly horrible. Except for this past year. This past year was tough for everyone, not just ReadMe. The market conditions changed. We got really lucky that we didn't raise money the past year. The past like the 2001 when things were like really, really great. So we didn't have like a gigantic valuation to worry about or anything like that. But that being said, like it was kind of like going like last summer, we're coming off, years of COVID, and I think people were like tired and a little depressed, and then there was market issues, and I don't tend to spend much time thinking about the market in general because there's really no point. But like it was, I don't know, it was like for you guys at Moesif, but like it was. People were scared, like, churn was going up because companies were just going out of business. Like, again, it wasn't like crazy or anything, but it was like, oh, this could go really badly over the next year. And it was the first time, because I said before, like, there's been a lot of problems over the past like 8 years or so, but it was, the problems were very like fixable or whatever, whereas this felt like it could be like an existential crisis that we had very little control over. And like, there's a lot of like talk about like, well, other companies were definitely doing layoffs, and I had a hard rule where I was like, we're not even talking about this. That kind of takes a big thing off the table when you say no layoffs. And the reason I didn't want to do layoffs was because I just want ReadMe to be a place that people enjoy working at, and I think layoffs are just really, really tough. They're really good at solving the money issue. Like you do the math and you're like, okay, well, if we lay off 5 people, then all of a sudden like this happens or whatever, and that's a good thing. But like for me, that's such like a callous way to look at things because what I care about is not money or building $1 billion company or anything like that, but like building a good place to work, and it just undermines it to death. So I took layoffs off the table like easily and pretty quickly, but that still meant that okay, we have to fix these problems, and it was hard. So what I did, and I'm going to talk from my perspective. There's a lot of people in my company, and everyone did, a lot. So this is just my version of the story, not the whole story. But like for me, I was like, okay, like we have to do things differently. And I canceled all my meetings and like started writing code again. A bunch of people around me started like, getting and building new features and stuff like that. Cause we're like, okay, we have to fix the churn issue. We're not going to get these companies to stay in business. That's, outside of the realm. So we just started launching new products. So we launched 3 new products that had price tags on them. Before that, we had 1 line of products that we charged for. Now we have 4. So the original 1 plus 3 new ones. And it was kind of tough because it felt like after COVID, like things were finally kind of getting better and like people were like a little happier and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden we get hit with this like, oh, like it's kind of like, now we gotta work, now we gotta build.
Right.
And yeah, and like we didn't have to do layoffs. Like everyone on the team, worked really hard and did great work. No one was pressured in a bad way. Like no one was working nights and weekends. Like luckily we were able to keep it where it was like, it's still my big belief is like, unless there's the site's down or something like that, like no one should work nights or weekends. But people still like worked really hard and like, things kind of like flipped internally and yeah, it wasn't fun. It was probably the worst year, definitely the worst year of my life as a CEO. But we got through it without any big negatives. It was, I think it could have gone either way, obviously. And I saw a lot of my friends' companies kind of go different directions and all that. And it wasn't fun, but I am proud of everything we built, everything we did, and that we, never considered layoffs or anything like that. And we got to cash flow positive, which again, we were pretty close, so it wasn't a big deal. I've always been kind of thoughtful about that, but yeah, it's nice. It was nice to kind of like control our own destiny and not have to do anything bad. We kind of like fought this downside with like by doing good things, by shipping more and exciting stuff, as opposed to like desperately like finding ways to even out the balance sheet.
Right. So I mean, really, instead of trimming the fat in terms of getting rid of resources to free up cash, you trim the fat probably around the productivity type of stuff where you're like, okay, let's double down on making our product better to hopefully increase the cash flow versus increasing the cash flow kind of from a less optimal way of, okay, we can't bring in new cash flow, so let's kind of drop our expenses down. Instead, you were like, hey, let's double down. Let's make something that we can sell even more of so that we can bump it up that way. Is that kind of the approach that you were thinking of when you made that decision?
Yeah, it's I think it's really hard to build the good things when you have like a excess of resources. By resources, I don't mean people, I mean like money.
Right.
Like even if we weren't raising money, there's always a thing in the back of your head, which is like, oh yeah, I could walk out tomorrow to like, Sand Hill Road. I guess that's an outdated reference, but like to, San Francisco and just like, raise a big round probably at a, gigantic valuation. And it's when you have that kind of like backstop that, like, okay, if things go badly, like we always have that. And raising money, by the way, is incredibly hard, even when the market's good. But like just kind of knowing that like that was possible, it makes it really hard to think about things as in like because you're always like you have like abundant resources, so you're like, well, let's put a little more time, a little more effort into this, like let's do it right, or do like you don't have like pressure. And then the past year we had a lot of pressure, and sometimes that goes really badly, and sometimes and for the record, as much as I'm happy now, I don't think I don't think it was a fun year. And I don't think if I could go back in time, I would prefer it didn't happen. But, it's of all the year later from then, this is probably the best case scenario. But then like, it wasn't like, it was a big toll though. Like I was so depressed and miserable and overwhelmed after the year. So I was so out of it. So I took a, 6 weeks off right at like a few months or about 2 months ago, because like about a year after this happened, because I was just a year of just like working nonstop and I was exhausted. Right. So I was lucky that I could do that, because I have a great team that made it so it didn't even seem like I was gone. But I definitely needed some time off after all that.
That's a good point. So, I mean, one of the things that a lot of founders and even, people who are early into a company, stepping away for a little bit in order to really amplify what your productivity is later is tough to do. So kind of what were some of those steps? Like, did you just decide like, hey, I'm going to take a bit of time off, kind of cut everything out, do what you needed to do? Or was it a little bit more methodical? Like, hey, 3 weeks from now, I'm going to take off 6 weeks or whatever. Yeah. Well, how did you get to that point? Because that's a really interesting one, because I see a lot of founders who burn out or are just generally unhappy because they don't get to take that time off.
Yeah. And I think I'm incredibly lucky that I was able to. I think, I've been doing this for 8 years and this is my first actual break. I've taken time off a lot, but like, it's hard to, the stressful part of my job isn't the day-to-day work. It's the worrying about things or thinking about things or like, and that seeps into weekends. So even if I, even hours that I'm not working, like I'm still like thinking about it. So this is the first time I could like actually like just not think about anything. Cause it was 6 weeks. I was like, I'm just completely gone for 6 weeks. I wasn't actually, I got bored a little bit and came back and did stuff here and there. But I got really lucky because, so the reason was I knew I was going to do it for a few months before, just because I was just so burnt out. But we needed a few hires to kind of, fill in some gaps. So we hired some people and they've been great. And that's why I was able to do it, luckily. We didn't hire them so I could take a break, but like we hired them because we were going to hire them anyway. And like once all the puzzle pieces were in place, then I could sneak away and no one would really notice. So it was super nice, but it's not something you can do, especially early on. I remember early on at ReadMe, I got so burnt out. This was like maybe like 3 or 4 years in, maybe less than that. And like, I just wanted to quit and I couldn't figure out who to quit to because I didn't have a boss or anything. So I was like, right, I don't know how to quit. And so obviously I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, but I felt so overwhelmed because I couldn't take a break then because we were small. And like, if I left for a week, so it's tough. Like it took 8 years before I could take time off, and it's like I can't do this every year. So it'll probably be a few more years so I can do it again. So it's hard.
So with that lesson, we'll move to this last piece here, which is those kind of tips that we can give to other founders or aspiring founders. And one that I would love to hear on is if you were to do it again. Okay, so thinking about kind of being able to separate the work life and the personal life, which is really hard to do as a founder. But would you, instead of taking, let's say, 8 years to get to the point where you're able to do that, do you think that there's a couple things that you could put in place if you were to start another company in another universe, that you would put in place kind of right away to make it so that being able to distance yourself from the business to kind of get your equilibrium back, what would those be?
Yeah, I don't think there is an answer. I know a lot of founders, and I think there's always a grass is always greener type thing where it's like, I should have raised more money. I should have raised less money. I should have hired this role sooner. I should have hired this role later. Like, I should have not done enterprise this early. I should have done enterprise. Like, I think there's so many different things, and I'm not saying that I did things perfectly at all, but I can't really think of anything huge that I would be like, oh, this is what I would do differently. There is one big one. I don't want to undercut what I just said, but I think the big one that I didn't have was a really good co-founder from the beginning, and one who understood businesses really well. I understand product well. I understand a lot of things. One thing that doesn't make sense to me just intrinsically is how to run a company. How to think about money, how to think about cash flow, stuff like that. And I'm not saying I would have wanted it sooner. I guess I would, because especially when you're early on, none of it really matters because you're just trying to make something work. So the spreadsheets are a little less predictable and all that. But we have a COO, Pat, now, and he just understands how it all works. And I can learn stuff and I can understand it to a certain amount, but it's never gonna come naturally to me. So I do wish I had a co-founder from the beginning, just someone who's in it with you. There's a lot of people who have worked at ReadMe for many, many, many years that are absolutely phenomenal and I love, but it's different when you because the buck still stops with me, and it's still it's a little bit different not to have a co-founder, no matter how loyal and great employees are. So I would go back, and if I go back, I wouldn't do it again without not just a co-founder, because you don't want just someone there. You want someone who really fills in the gaps. But I didn't know what my gaps were at the time, because at the time I didn't have gaps early in the company that are the same gaps I have now, if that makes sense. Early on, it was desperately trying to just get a product that someone kind of wanted, and now the gaps are very different. So and you just need so it's tough, but I think that's the one thing that I would do differently.
Okay. Any other kind of tips? Maybe, when you were developing the idea for ReadMe, kind of how did that come about? Because I think a lot of folks, especially aspiring founders, go, I really want to found a company. I just don't know what I want to build. Yeah. Do you have a little bit of maybe some guidance there on how they can do that?
Yeah, so when I started ReadMe, I knew I wanted to start a company, which is the worst reason to start a company. And I was I just thought that this idea was not the best idea, and frankly, it's not the best idea. There's much better ideas out there. And I tried different things, but I would procrastinate by working on ReadMe because it was just what excited me, and I couldn't get out of my head. And I just that's all I wanted to work on. And I kept being it's just not a good. I don't know. I don't know if it's a good business. There weren't many dev tools that were big back then. It was just GitHub, and that's it. And there's a few others, but it felt like a really tough path. And I think just that product. That founder product fit is really important, where it's something that you because this becomes your absolute every minute of every day. And if you end up hating it or not loving it, it's brutal. It's brutal when you love it, and it's real brutal when you don't. And the second thing is I think you have to be. It's hard to be honest with yourself, because everyone's going to be nice to you and be oh yeah, it's a great idea. And for me, I got a lot of those. Oh, it's a great idea. Not for ReadMe, but I was trying to find the very I had the same idea, but it was where do I draw the line? What do I do? What don't I do? What's the how do you I knew there's something there, but I wasn't quite there yet. And then I kept putting off launching because I kept working with people, and it wasn't quite there, and I could just see that people weren't that excited about it. And then I finally hit something, and people were you could just tell that it flipped. They were oh, can I sign up for it now? And I'm no, it doesn't. It's not ready yet. They're well, when's it ready? And it just changed so quickly the way people were responding to me, and I was okay, I'm so glad that I kind of took a beat and tried to understand what people wanted, and waited, because you can just tell when people are just being nice or trying it out or whatever. or maybe you can't tell. I don't know, but like you definitely tell when they're like they love it, and like that's kind of the important part you have to wait for.
Awesome. That's great. I think that's a great answer to a question that so many people kind of ask themselves of what should I build? How should I build it? What do I look for in something that I'm passionate about? So thank you so much for answering that.
Definitely.
With that being said, I'd love to wrap things up, but I always ask one last question.
Okay.
And I think this is kind of like across the board, every podcast asks this, but if you had to recommend a book, a podcast, maybe even some type of publication that founders should be reading or maybe should take a look at, what would you recommend?
Can I do a weird one? Or I'm going to do a weird one, I guess.
Absolutely do a weird one.
Okay, I want to take some weird direction. So there's a show called Mythic Quest. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's by some of the people who do Always Sunny. It's on Apple TV. It's a sitcom TV show, workplace sitcom. It's okay. It's not a great show. It's fine. Like it's fine. But the fifth, I think, episode of the first season is like this like micro story. It's called A Quiet Dark Place or Quiet Dark Death, something like that. And it's this episode with like completely different characters, completely different actors, like completely different storyline. It's just like a completely different vibe. And it's this is I'm recommending this for founders. It's so good. It's the characters in there are starting a game, and so not a company, but like they are starting a company, but it's a game, not a startup. And it to me it just like kind of like mapped a lot of my experiences and stuff. And I think it's such a fascinating, like everyone I've shown it to like has like a different takeaway and like felt something different from it. Some people just liked it, but some were like, oh my God, like that's what I've been struggling with or stuff like this. And it's a really great episode. You don't have to watch the whole show to understand it. You just need to watch that one episode. There's a few little things that maybe won't make sense, but like it's a standalone thing completely. So that's my weird answer.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. That's great. With that, I want to thank you again for joining. It's been absolutely great chatting with you. And hopefully we'll chat again sometime soon.
Perfect. Always happy to do that. Thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Greg. Thanks so much for joining this episode of From Vision to Venture. We appreciate you taking the time to listen and be a part of the audience here. If you found today's discussion intriguing, there's plenty more episodes to come. Stay in the loop. Definitely subscribe, and we'd love if you'd leave us a rating or a comment on your platform of choice. Now, to stay in the loop with Moesif, you can follow us on social media, which is at Moesif, Moesif HQ on all of your favorite platforms. Thanks again for joining, and we hope to see you soon.